Let's be honest, when we think of medieval food, what comes to mind? Maybe a dark, smoky hall, a giant, greasy roast haunch of meat, or perhaps a bland, lumpy porridge. It's a picture painted by centuries of popular culture, one that suggests a culinary dark age. It's easy to think of it as primitive, or even unappetizing. But what if I told you that the medieval kitchen was a place of quiet genius, a laboratory of survival, where cooks, often women, the unsung scientists of their time, developed clever, sophisticated tricks to preserve food, enhance nutrition, and create flavor long before modern science could explain why they worked. These weren't just recipes. They were algorithms for survival, passed down through generations, honed by observation and necessity. This video is for historical and educational purposes only. We do not provide instructions or encourage attempting these historical practices today. Many of these methods were developed for a world without modern sanitation, and what was once a survival tactic could be dangerous now. For generations, some of these methods were even frowned upon or banned by authorities who didn't understand them. Guilds, church officials, and town councils, in their attempts to ensure public safety, sometimes outlawed practices that were, in fact, incredibly effective. But now, researchers, food historians, and scientists are looking back at these forgotten techniques and saying, our ancestors were onto something. They were pioneers of food science, even if they didn't have the words for it. So, pull up a chair to the hearth. We're uncovering 5 banned or misunderstood medieval cooking tricks that scientists now say were absolutely brilliant. We've all heard the tales of medieval feasts drowning in spices, pepper, cinnamon, ginger, saffron. It seems excessive, almost comical to our modern palates. The enduring myth is that this was a crude attempt to mask the taste of rotting meat. But here's the thing, that heavy spicing wasn't just about showing off wealth or covering up the taste of spoiled meat. That's a modern myth. Spices were astronomically expensive. You wouldn't waste them on food that was already beyond saving. The truth is far more elegant. The real reason is far more interesting. In a world without germ theory, people operated on a different kind of logic. The logic of humoral medicine, inherited from the ancient Greeks and Romans. This complex system proposed that the human body was composed of 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Health was a state of perfect balance between them. They believed food could balance the body's systems. Every ingredient was categorized as hot, cold, wet, or dry. Spices, often hot and dry in their properties, were seen as powerful digestive aids, essential for processing cold and wet foods like fish or certain vegetables. An old-timer might have said, "A pinch of pepper doesn't just warm the tongue, it fires up the stomach's forge, helping it burn through the meal." And guess what? Modern science offers a fascinating why. Many of those prized spices, like cloves, cinnamon, and sage, are packed with powerful antimicrobial compounds. Eugenol in cloves, cinnamaldehyde in cinnamon, these are potent natural chemicals that actively fight off microbes. When you rubbed them on meat or stirred them into a stew, you weren't just making it taste exotic. You were inadvertently slowing down bacterial growth. It was a preservative that doubled as a flavor bomb. Think about it from their perspective. If you'd spent a fortune on a precious ounce of saffron or pepper, traded from halfway across the known world, you wouldn't just waste it on rotten food. You'd use it to protect your valuable meal, to ensure your investment didn't spoil. It was a form of culinary insurance. So that lavish spiced dish was less about masking failure and more about ensuring success. A brilliant, instinctive application of plant chemistry that we now fully understand. Now, this next trick might make you squirm a little. We're talking about fermentation. And not just for ale or wine, though they were masters of that, but for preserving, well, almost everything else. In a world without refrigeration, harnessing controlled decay was not just a technique. It was a cornerstone of civilization. In an age before canning or freezing, letting food strategically break down was a survival superpower. Take cabbage. By shredding it, salting it, and packing it tightly in a crock, medieval households created an anaerobic environment where friendly lactic acid bacteria could thrive. These microscopic allies would outcompete the dangerous, spoilage-causing microbes. The result? Sauerkraut. A staple that could last through the long, lean winter months, packed with vitamins, especially vitamin C, when fresh greens were a distant memory, warding off diseases like scurvy. But they took it further. Grains and water were left to sour to make digestible porridges and bread starters, breaking down phytic acid and unlocking nutrients. Milk, a highly perishable and precious resource, was clabbered or turned into a vast array of cheeses and fermented drinks like kefir. A medieval cook knew that a slightly tangy smell or a bubbly texture wasn't always a sign of danger. It could be a sign of transformation, of life creating more life. And here's where the banned part comes in. Church authorities and local guilds often issued strict rules about food preparation and sale. The line between properly fermented and spoiled was thin and varied from one town to the next. A unique cheese or brew made by a savvy housewife could be seen as suspicious, even prohibited, if it didn't fit the local officials' idea of what was safe. These regulations, meant to prevent food poisoning, could inadvertently stifle innovation and punish those who were masters of this invisible art. They were regulating a science they couldn't see. Today, of course, we celebrate fermentation. We buy probiotic yogurt and kimchi for gut health. Scientists confirm that these processes not only preserve food, but also pre-digest it, breaking down hard-to-process compounds and creating beneficial nutrients like B vitamins. Our ancestors weren't just eating rotten food, they were harnessing microbiology to build a more resilient pantry and a healthier body. That's not just clever, that's genius. Picture a medieval kitchen. You're likely imagining a roaring fire with a cauldron hanging over it or a massive joint of meat turning on a spit. And that's true for grand feasts in a castle. But for the day-to-day, for the average family, fuel was precious. Wood was labor to chop and cart. In many areas, it was a resource controlled by the local lord. You couldn't afford to keep a raging fire going all day just to simmer a pot of beans. Every piece of firewood represented time and energy that could have been spent elsewhere. So they got clever. They became masters of energy efficiency. They mastered the art of residual heat cooking. One widespread method was the bean pot, or fireless cooker technique. A pot of stew, beans, or porridge would be brought to a rolling boil over the morning fire. Then, instead of keeping it on the flame, the entire pot would be nestled into a straw-lined box, a hole in the hearthstones, or even a cozy bed of hay and blankets. The insulation would trap the heat, allowing the food to cook gently for hours without using another stick of wood. You could go tend the fields, do chores, or go to market and come home to a hot, ready meal. It was the medieval equivalent of a slow cooker or a thermal lunchbox. The other star of this category was the testum, or Klebanus. Now, this trick has very deep roots, going back to the Romans and even earlier civilizations. It's a fascinating piece of tech, a bell-shaped lid made of clay or earthenware. You'd place your dough or a small joint of meat on a preheated hearthstone, cover it with this clay dome, and then pile hot embers and ash all over the top and around the sides. This created a tiny, portable oven, a microenvironment of intense, radiant heat. The heat surrounded the food evenly, baking bread with a perfect crust or roasting meat with incredible efficiency. Archaeological finds and ancient recipes hint that this fire above and below method was a staple. It was perfect for households that didn't have a large built-in bread oven, which was most of them. It democratized baking. Both of these tricks show a profound understanding of thermodynamics, of capturing and using heat efficiently. It was about getting the maximum output from the minimum input. They turned the necessity of fuel conservation into an advantage, creating tender, slow-cooked meals and perfectly baked goods that are difficult to replicate even with modern appliances. It was sustainable, economical cooking, centuries before the words were ever coined.